Kakadosh Boker Or Masechet Bava Metzia Daf Amud Aleph 38:1. We are on the two dots on the first line where it says Shotcha letzorkah aval lo lichvodo. So we're talking about right now that what happens if you find, let's say, a clothing. So you're allowed to spread it out in order that it doesn't get wrinkled, it doesn't get creased and everything. But you're not allowed to do it for his own honor, in order to make the house beautiful. Meaning, for example, you found the clothing. Now, if you're going to keep it in a certain place, it could be that it's going to become destroyed. So what do? You're allowed to put it out, right? Now, but if you're just putting it out, just the main purpose is that way it looks nice and it's in your house, that's going to be prohibited. Ibailehu. So now they're going to ask the following question. Letzorko veletzorka mai. Until now, it was very clear. If it's for the necessity of the clothing, it's prohibited. His own permitted. His own necessity, permitted. What about if it's for both? It's for both. It's for my necessity and the clothing. Meaning, I'm going to benefit because it looks nice and I'm putting nice clothing around, right? But also the clothing is going to benefit. So what's halacha now? So Tashema, we're going to try to bring a proof. Shodcha letzorkah. If you're going to do it for the tzorech of the clothing, letzorkah in, for its tzorech, it's fine. But letzorko letzorkah, it's going to be asur. So says the Gemara, yeah, but I could deduce from the Seifa the exact opposite. Ema Seifa, avalol lichvodo, not for his honor. For his honor is going to be prohibited. But if it's going to be for himself and for the clothing, it's going to be permitted. So you can't bring a proof from the Mishnah. Meaning you can't bring a proof from the Mishnah because at the end of the day, you could deduce from the Reisha A and from the Seifa B, the exact opposite. So let's see another Braita. Tashema, we're going to try to bring a proof. לא ישתחנה לא על גבי מיטה ולא גבי מנוד לצורכו, אבל ישתחנה על גבי מיטה ועל גבי מנוד לצורכה. So he says over here, you're not allowed to come and to spread it out, not on top of a bed or not on top of a peg. A peg. Peg is something that you put in the wall and you hang. It's like something on, it's called a peg. Yeah? So he says, but he comes and he says, letzorko, for its own necessity, right? For his necessity. But you could do it for the necessity of the clothing. What happens now if you have guests? Whether it's for its tzorech or the tzorech of the clothing or for his own tzorech as well. So here, the Gemara is saying that the reason why it's going to be a sur is because when you're going to spread it out, whether it's going to be for the tzorko or tzorka, especially when you have guests in the house, it comes out that ki'ilu, right, it's going to be for you as well. And therefore that's why it's going to be asur. So answers the Gemara. Yeah, shane hatam, it's different over there. The mikla kalila, right? So he says it's chashuv, like as if it's burning it. Imishum ena, imishum ganave. Or because of ainara, or because of ganavim. Yeah, what does that mean exactly? Yeah, I didn't know. What are we talking about? We're talking about, the Braita is talking about, in the other cases of that you're spreading out an aveda for tzorko and tzorka. So what did we just say? We just said that it's chashuv, as if you're burning the clothing, okay? Whether there's two different explanations. Why is it kilu you're burning the clothing? Ainara. Meaning, when you come and you're going to put it out in front of the orchim, what happens with the orchim? They come, they look at this clothing and say, wow, what a beautiful clothing. They just burnt the clothing. How did they just burn the clothing? Ainara. Or mishum ganave, or because of ganavim. What does that mean? That you have ganavim that they're going to come and they're going to steal it because once they see such a beautiful clothing, they're going to look for it. So therefore, even if you're going to tell me that it should be permitted, right, if you find the clothing, leshotcha letzorkol tzorka, here when you have guests, it's prohibited. So don't bring me a proof to do with if you're going to find, right, a clothing, or you're allowed to do a letzorkol tzorka, right, if right now we're talking about, right, if we're talking about, how do you call this? Yeah? the the ganavim. Okay, fine. Tashema. We're gonna try to bring a proof now. Okay. Hichnisa lerivka. Yeah. What happens now? You have a balagala that he's bringing in, right? We're talking about the egla rufa. So imagine you have this egla, right? And what happens is that you're going to put it into where you put the animals where they have it on their necks, right? They tie the reins to the neck. Now the kavanah is that the egla should start feeding from its mother that was within it. The dasha, and now what happens is it starts doing dash, right? Now dash is to thresh. Now we know that all of a sudden, right, it's still going to be kasher for an egla rufa, right? What does it mean now, kasher for egla rufa? Bishvil shetinak v'tadush. So he says, if right now you're putting it in order to feed and to do the disha, it's going to be pasul to be an egla rufa. Okay? So obviously here we're talking about that at the end of the day it did do work. And we know that usually if it does work, it's not allowed to be an egla rufa anymore. But here, the kavanah at the beginning was not to do work, was just to put it to feed from its mother. But by the way, it did work. It did dash. It did threshing. So he comes and he says, but in this case, right, it's for the necessity of the egla, for its own necessity to feed from its mother, and for the necessity, right, of the disha. So it's for both. Uktani, and we said, it's still going to be psula, right? You're not allowed to make it anymore into an egla rufa. So here you see when you do something which is going to be letzorkol utzorka, it's a sur. So answers the Gemara. Shane hatam, it's different over there. Tamakra, the pasuk says ashelu ubad ba. What does it mean ashelu ubad ba? That it didn't do any avodah. And mikol makom, that's in any type of an avodah. Which means even if you're going to tell me that usually kabila tzorkol utzorka should be permitted, here it's a special halacha, right? That you cannot do any type of work, even if it's also going to be litzorka. So says the Gemara, if so, afilu reishanami. Even in the first case where you put the animal inside and then it threshed without kavanah to do threshing, it should also be the same halacha, that it should be asur. So answers the Gemara, halo damya, what are we dealing with? That which we learned in the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, right, shachan alea off. If right now you have an off, yeah, what does that mean? You have an off on the para, and this is now talking about paraduma, this week's parasha. Yeah. So what happens? It's going to be 1 second, right? It's going to be kasher for a paraduma. Alea zachar, but if a male comes to it to have relations with it, right? Then what? It's going to be psula, right? It's not going to be pasul. Okay. So says the Gemara, Maitama, what's the reasoning why a paraduma becomes pasul when the male goes on top of it and not when the bird goes on top of it? So says the Gemara, it's like Rav Papa. Ta'amar Rav Papa, but Rav Papa comes and he says to do with egla rufa, that it says ashelo ubad ba. Yeah, do you realize that the word ubad is without a vav? You read it ubad. Remember, in the Hebrew language, you have two nekudot. You have a melupum and a shuruk, right? There's different machlokets, which one's which. But whichever one that it is, one of them is a vav with an u, and one of them is the three dots going down in like a how do you call this? In like a diagonal, going, like the backwards, as they say. Okay? So therefore, he says here, when it says ashelo ubad, the word ubad, you read it ubad. But for example, if you take a Sefer Torah and you're going to read, you could read ashelo avadba, right? But it's really ubadba. Now it's missing the letter vav. Okay? That means the nekudot would be the three dots going diagonal backwards, but it's missing the letter vav, right? That it would be the ubad. So says the Gemara, iketiv, if it would have been written ubad with the vav, the karina ubad, and then we actually read it that way as well. So havamina would have had the havamina shafilu mimela, meaning that even if the animal does an avodah mimela and not, meaning on its own, without the dot of the baalim, it becomes pasul. Okay, so therefore the egla would become pesula. The ketiv, now if it's written avad, The karinan avad. Now, if it was written without the vav, which that's the way it's written, by the way, and you would have read it avad. So havamina, I would have thought to say ad de avad ba'iu, that the ba'alim have to do the avodah, meaning they have to come and they have to make it do the avodah. Then it's going to become pasul. If not, no. But hashta dichtiv, now that it's written avad, and we read it ubad, ba'inan ubad dumya de avad. We need the ubad exactly like avad. Ma avad, just like avad, it's always the nichale, that it has to be that it was good for him. Af ubad te nichale. So to ubad has to be te nichale. Something incredible. One more time. Here we have a word in the Hebrew language. And basically this word in the Hebrew language, right, is actually spelled one way and pronounced another way. So therefore, what the Gemara says is, if it would have been written ubad and read ubad, which means with the vav, right, written ayin vav bet dalid and pronounced ayin vav bet dalid, which that's what would have been done. So I would have thought to say that it becomes disqualified even if it does the avodah on its own. Meaning the second that it does the avodah, I don't care whether it's nichale, no lichale, whether it does an avodah, kaddish. That's it. It becomes pasul. Why? It did an avodah. Fine. If it would have been written avad, which that's the way it is written, by the way, but also pronounced avad. So ad de avadba means that the owners come and make it work, which means if it's going to come and work on its own, even though I'm benefiting from it and I'm enjoying from it, it doesn't become pasul because I didn't make it work. So therefore, even though there is a benefit, it doesn't matter. But now that it's read ubad, but it's written avad, because that's the way it is. It's written ayin bet dalid, which is avad, but I pronounce it ubad. So therefore, I have to compare it to the ubad like avad. What does that mean? Just like when it's avad, which means that the owners are forcing, are making it work. It's usually because it's nichale, which means it's good for the owners. So to the ubad, that means even though ubad means more, that it's done on its own, it's only when it's going to be done that the owners are actually benefiting from it. So therefore, from here, we're learning that it's not just enough that it does work. Even if it does work mimela, which technically speaking, maybe I would have said makes it pasul. No, it has to be done that even if it's done mimela, but it has to be nene. It has to be that the owner is actually benefiting from it. Okay? And therefore, as long as he has some type of a benefit, so let's go back. The case of the bird, the owner is not benefiting. A bird comes and it lands on my paraduma. What do I care about the bird? It's doing work. It's carrying the bird. I'm not benefiting it. So therefore, it's doing work. It doesn't matter. So therefore, it's kasher. But if it's going to be the case of the male that's going to have relations with it, since I would benefit because now it could have children, right? So therefore, even though it could be that you're going to say, no, but maybe you didn't want it that way. Okay, didn't want, but it was done the work. It was done. I didn't have to do it. So I written avad. So the ubad, meaning it was done even more, but it has to be that I'm benefiting. Here I'm benefiting. If it could have children, I'm benefiting. So therefore it becomes pasul. So therefore, again, it comes out that we do not have, that's why he says over here that when you have the eglah going in and it's going to nurse from its mother, even though it did do dash, since it does not become pasul, because at the end of the day, right, it's not something that I'm really benefiting for it. So therefore it does not become pasul. Okay? Which one? The Gemara says 2 dots on the Lamed Amud Aleph towards the bottom. Matzah kli chesed v'kli nechoshet mishtamesh bein. If you're going to find kli chesed or kli nechoshet, you're allowed to use it. Yeah? So he said, what does that mean? You're allowed to use it, but not that you're going to come and to destroy it. So Tana Rabbanan, we learned in a Braita. Hamotzeh kli etz. If you're going to find a utensil made out of wood, mishtamesh bein, you're allowed to use it, bishvil shelo yikrevu, in order that it shouldn't get ruined. Kli nechoshet, mishtamesh bein. Bechamin, you're allowed to use it with hot water or hot foods. Avalo alidei but not on the fire. Okay, because if you put the kli nechoshet on the fire, shemashchikan, because it makes it get ruined. So basically, again, everything that we're allowing you to use was for a purpose to save the utensil. Because if you're not going to use it at all, it's going to become ruined. So therefore, you're allowed to use it a certain aspect. Matzah kli chesef, you could only use it when it's going to be cold. Avalo bechamin, but not in hot. Because you make it black. You blacken it. Matzah magrefot. Magrefot are mardeh. Here it says mardim is like something which they use to clean the ovens, right? Or, right, in order to cut the tenim medubakot to the oven, kardumot, right? Mishtamesh be'em berach. You're only allowed to cut soft foods, aval lo bekasher, but not in hard foods. Mipnei shemavchitan, because you're going to cause them to become pagum. Kle zahav ukle zechit. When we're talking about gold and glass, lo yigabayin. Do not touch them until Elyonavi comes. Why? Because basically these utensils, they don't get ruined, so you're not allowed to touch it until Elyonavi comes and tells us who does it belong to. Okay, says the Gemara. Kederech she'amru ba'aveda, kach amru b'pikadon, which means just like by an aveda, you're only allowed to use it in order to be shomer on the aveda, in order to safeguard the aveda. So to the same halacha would apply to a pikadon. Somebody leaves you a pikadon, you're only allowed to use it if you're safeguarding it, but not just stam to come and use a pikadon. So says the Gemara, pikadon, ma'eva tegabeh. What is it doing by him? Which means, why does he need it? Yeah? If right now the Baalim are there and they know it's in his hands, so why in the world would he be able to use it? Doesn't make sense. So Amar Ravada Bar Chama Amar Rav Sheshat, says Ravada Bar Chama name of Rav Sheshat, Bepikadon shalchu balehem Medinat Hayam. No, we're talking about Pikadon, but their owners went to Medinat Hayam. So since the owners went to Medinat Hayam, so therefore you're allowed to use it only in the case where you're going to make sure that it's not going to get ruined. Meaning that you're doing it in order that the utensil doesn't get ruined. You're not using its stam for your own personal, right, benefits. Okay. 2 dots. Matzah sak o kupa v'chol davar shendarko litol. Hare ze lo yitol. If a person finds a sackcloth or a kupa, right, or anything which at the end of the day you do not take, because it's not like of the kavod to come and to take it. So he comes and he says, right, so what is he allowed to do? Lo yitol. He doesn't need to take it. He's going to be patur from doing hashavat aveda. Says the Gemara, how do we know that you're going to be patur? The Tanu Rabbanan, the Torah says, right, the rabbis taught that it says in the Torah, vitalamta mehem. What does that mean? Because it says, lo tir'ef, you're not going to see, shorachicha otzioni dachim, vitalamta mehem. What does vitalamta mehem mean? So we're going to learn, right? We're going to learn that when it says vitalamta mehem, it says here pamim shata mitalem, pamim sheyata mitalem. When it says the word vitalamta mehem, it means sometimes you're going to be mitalem and sometimes you're not, which means sometimes you're going to close your eyes and sometimes you're not going to close your eyes. Hakei said, what's the case exactly? So he says, Aya Kohen. What happens if he's a Kohen and the Aveda is in the Bet HaKvarot? Or Shaya Zaken, or he's an elderly person. Veno lefi kvodot, it's not going to be his kavod. Or Shayta melacha shelo, or you have, this is the melacha that he does, right? And then he means that he has a lot of how do you call that? He was doing a melacha, right? Which is basically a very expensive melacha, mishel chavero, right? Now, if he's going to come and give it back, he has to waste time from doing the melacha. So lekach ne'emar, that's why it says that sometimes there's going to be permission that you don't have to actually give it back. So there does exist a concept that sometimes you close your eyes and you don't have to give back the aveda. So says the Gemara, lemai, right? What are we talking about exactly? Lemai yitzikra. Why do I need the pasuk exactly to teach you they're going to be patur? If it's talking about the Kohen case and the aveda is going to be in the Bet HaKvarot, Pshita obviously, he says, Hayaseh, v'lo ta'aseh v'aseh. He says, this mitzvah, v'ashavat aveda, is a mitzvah taseh. The isur of a Kohen becoming tamemet is a lo ta'aseh and a naseh. Right? V'lo atiyaseh et lo ta'aseh v'aseh. Now, a positive commandment can never push off a positive and a negative commandment. So if you have a positive plus a negative, so therefore, it can never actually come and take it off. It can't push it off. So you don't need a pasuk for that, for the Kohen and the Aveda is going to be in the Bet HaKvarot. V'tu, and furthermore, lo dachina nisura mikame mamona. We will never push off an isur because of a mitzvah of mamon. Hashavat Aveda is a mitzvah of mamon. Okay? And the isur is tumat kohanim, right? Tumat for the Kohen. So you'll never push it off. So therefore, obviously, I don't need a pasuk for a Kohen and the Aveda is going to be in the Bet HaKvarot. Ela rather, shelo merubeh, right, mishel chavero, which means that the me Aveda is actually going to be more, right? Meaning it's going to be less than the schar that you're doing the work of your friend. So therefore, and that you learn it from Rav Yehuda Marav Nafka, that you learn from Yehuda Marav. Why? Amar Rav Yehuda Marav says of Yehuda Marav, Efes ki lo ye becha evyon, lamed amubet, right? 30b. When it says, the pasuk comes and it says that the pasuk is teaching us to do with money, and we're talking about the shmidah on money, shilcha kodem l'shel kol adam. Your money comes before anybody else's money, which means like this, right? Let's say my money, right, and somebody else's money, they're both going libud. They're both going to be destroyed. I could save one person's money, my money or my friend's money. Whose money do I save? Obviously my own money, right? And that what we're learning here, lo yeh b'chayvyon, means that even though you have a chovan shmira on the money of somebody else, but your money comes first. So therefore, if you're working and your work is more valuable than the hashavat avedah, why do I need a pasuk to tell you could close your eyes and not do hashavat avedah? Right? At the end of the day, your work is more important because you're not going to get rid of your money. So says the Gemara. So you're right. For that, I also don't need a pasuk. Ela lezaken ve'eno lefi chvodo. Says the Gemara. You're right. You know what I need a pasuk? The pasuk is for a zaken. Meaning, when you have a zaken and it's not his kavod to come and start running after this avedah and then trying to give it back, v'chule v'chule, so he's allowed v'italamta. He's allowed to come and close his eyes because it's not his kavod to give it back. Right? And therefore, that's what he's coming and he's saying. So that's where you need the pasuk of v'italamta. So therefore, even though we brought down 3 cases, we really only needed the pasuk for 1 case. Because the other 2 cases was pashut that you're not going to actually come and do the hashavat avedah, whether it's a kohen and to do a tum'ah, or whether we're talking about that you're working and you would have to actually lose your own parnasah to get back the avedah, and your parnasah is worth more than the avedah. Obviously, you don't have to do that. There, you don't need a pasuk, so it's only for the zaken. Ve'enu lefi kvodo. Amar Rabba. Rabba comes and he says, Hikisha, which means if the zaken comes and he was makish the be'ema vuda, even if he only hit it 1 hitting, chayavba, he's obligated to come and he's obligated to do it, which means like this. The ptur is because he never actually started, right, the mitzvah. But once he starts the mitzvah, he's chayav to finish the mitzvah. Which means if he came and he did 1 little action on the animal, whether it's how do you say literally the hikisha, not to hit, there's a better word for it. Doctor, what does it say there? Hikisha, right? It's he gives like a, I don't know, you want to say pat?
No, it's a hit.
A hit? Okay. But it says that it's talking about like even a little, like 1 little tiny hit. I don't know, I would have probably called it a pat or whatever it is. He pat the animal, but whatever. Well, that's okay. You want to call it hit. To hit the animal, he's going to be chayav. So Abaye avayativ kameh de Rabba. Abaye was sitting in front of Rabba. The chazalanach ize de kaimu. Now we saw that there were zizim that were there, and he understood that they were lost. So shakal kala ushtabehu. He took a piece of earth and he threw it at them, right, in order that they should go to their owners. Amar le, said Rabba, ichayavta behu, right, now you're chayav to do a shavat avedah, v'kum adrinu, go give it back. Meaning, before you came and you actually did anything, even though you knew they were lost, you're not chayav in a shavat avedah. But now that you threw a piece of earth at it, so that way basically they're going to go to their owners, now you're obligated to do hashavat avedah. Okay? Fine. 1 second. So he says now like this. So he says, now the Gemara is going to ask, do the zaken ve'enu lefi kvodo. Ibai lehu. So we're going to ask the following question. Darko le'achzir basadeh ve'en darko le'achzir ba'ir mahu. What happens if the zaken would come and he finds it in the sadeh? And the Bala Veda, he lives in the city. Now, the zaken would give it back, right? He's not mitbayesh to give it back in the field, because there's not a lot of people that see him. But he doesn't want to do it in the city, because it's not his kavod to start paying attention to this Aveda in the city. So what's halacha? Is he obligated to or not? Mi amrinan, do we say, hashta me'alya be'inan? Do we say that now the mitzvah of Shavada Veda has to be done bishlemut? And since he never gives it back in the city, so lo lechayev, he's not obligated in Shavata Veda. Or dilmar, maybe basadeh miya to di chayev le. Basadeh, he is chayav to give it back. So now since he's chayav in the sadeh, So he's chayav also in the city. So answers the Gemara, Teku. We don't have actually an answer. It's a very good question. We're not actually sure. So Amar Rava comes and he says, Kol shebeshelo machzir, beshel chavero nami machzir. He comes and he says something incredible. If right now he would have been machzir, his own utensil to his house, yeah, so therefore he's obligated to give back also, right, his friend's utensil. V'chol shebeshelo porek v'toen, v'shel chavero nami porek v'toen. And the same thing if it would have been for his own, he would have taken it off the animal and been porek v'toen, which means he would have carried it in order not to burden the animal. He's also obligated to do it for his animal, which means like this. The Gemara, Rava is giving us a litmus test. Right? We just said that as a ken, and it's not going to be lefi kvodo, he doesn't have to do it. Right? What does it mean it's not lefi kvodo? Imagine all of a sudden the guy comes, it's not my kavod, so he's not going to do it. So says the Gemara, let's see if he would have done that for his own object. Meaning if he's going to be carrying his own object in the city, and it was going to be, I don't know what, a plate. So it comes out that if it's going to be a plate, so therefore he could carry his friend's plate, and he can't say it's not lefi kvodo. But if he wouldn't have carried it in the city, so you're right, so that's what I meant, lo lefi kvodo. The same halacha applies to prika v'teina, which means that if we have a mitzvah that if the animal is suffering because there's a big heavy load on top of it, you have to be porek, you have to take it off, and then you have to put it back on. You take it off so that way it's not doesn't have a heavy burden and it's going to break under the heavy burden, and then you put it back on, but you carry it yourself. So therefore, if you would have done it to your own animal, right? Now this is not to do with the zaken, this is just tam in general, right? So if you would do it to your own animal, you're obligated to do it, right, to your friend's animal as well. So you can't just say, I wouldn't have done it, it's not my kavod. No, one second. If you would have done it to your own animal, so then you could do it to your friend's animal as well. And the Gemara is going to bring a story to do with this. So the Gemara says, Rabbi Yishmael Rabbi Yossi avikazil beorcha. Rabbi Yishmael Rabbi Yossi was going on the path. Pagabe hau gavra. And he met somebody, havadare patcha de ufe, that he was carrying a whole bunch of bundles of wood. Otvinu v'kamitpach. Now, right, what happened is he put them on the ground in order to rest a little bit. Yeah? So Amarle, so Rabbi Yishmael Rabbi Yossi comes and he tells him, Delile, right, put them on me. Amarle, he comes and he tells them, Kama shavin, how much are they worth? Amarle, he says, Palga de Zuza. Yeah, they're worth, right, half a zuz. So Yaivle, he gave him Palga de Zuza, right, and he bought them from him. Ve'afkere, and he made it ifker, which means he didn't want to do it. He just didn't want the mitzvah. He didn't want to do the mitzvah of teina. So therefore, since he saw, so what did he do? He went, right, and he made it ifker. Everyone understood what happened? One more time. You have the Rabbi, Rabbi Yishmael Rabbi Yosef. He's going on the path. He met a guy. The guy was carrying bundles. Now the guy, he was so tired. It was very, very. So what? He put on the floor. Now Rabbi Yishmael Rabbi Yosef comes and he says, okay, fine. Technically speaking, right, if it's a mitzvah to be toen on the animal, kal v'chomer on the human being himself, meaning if there's a mitzvah that if you see an animal suffering, that you have to actually come and help the animal in order, so kal v'chomer on a human being. So this guy was suffering. He put down the wood. So the rabbi comes and he asks him, by the way, technically you would have to give it to me. But he asked him, 1 second, how much is the value? How much is the value of what you're carrying? So he said half a zuz. So he went, he gave him half a zuz. Now he bought it. Now what did he do? He made it ifker. Now why? He didn't really want to buy it. He just didn't want to do the mitzvah of tina. Now the guy was a smart aleck. You know what he did? He picked it up again. Yeah. So what happened? Right? Hadazacha behu. He was zochenet. Hadar yayiv lepalga de zuz avavkere. Again he gave him half a zuz, and he made it efker. Chazi de v'kabayel meludo miska behu. Amar le, he went and he said lekulam afkerinu velach lo afkerinu. He went and he saw that the guy was going to do the same thing. So you know what he did? He pulled he was also quick, right? He could be fooled once, twice. Don't try to fool me 3 times. What did he do? Immediately he comes and he says, I'm making it ifker to everybody except for you. It's ifker for everybody except for you.
Is there such a thing?
Says the Gemara. Umi have ifker ki gavna. Does it exist such a concept that you can make ifker, right, in such a way that I'm making it ifker for everybody except for you? So says the Gemara. The Atram we learned in a Mishnah and Peah. Bet Shammai Omrim, Bet Shammai says ifker la'aniyim hefker. If a person comes and he's mafkir to the aniyim, that only aniyim could take it, and not the ashirim, it is considered hefker. But according to Bet Hillel, Eno afker at she'afker l'aniyim v'shirim k'shmita. He says if you want to make something afker, it has to be afker to everybody, to the aniyim, to the ashirim, which means that even if a rich guy is going to come and take it, that's it. It's afker. So it comes out it's a machloka between Bet Hillel and Bet Shammai. And Bet Hillel says that it's not going to be afker unless you make it afker for everybody. So Ella, but rather Rabbi Shalom, Rabbi Yossi, right? Lechuli alma afkerinu uveminta be'alma udukmo. Basically, what happened is that he be'emet was mafkir to everybody. But that's how we paskin. He had to be mafkir to everybody. But he was just saying that just in order to stop him from doing it. Meaning, he told them that even though it wasn't true. Because it doesn't exist. Meaning, he could want to say that, but it just doesn't work. But he said it just to stop him from acquiring it again. You understand? That means even though, right, it does not work, right, this is what he actually came and he actually said. Okay? Just give me 1 second. I'm going to get to the 2 dots and then you could ask questions. So he says, but, Rabbi Yishmael, Rabbi Yossi, right? So he says, so says the Gemara, what are you talking about? But Rabbi Yishmael, Rabbi Yossi, Zaken, Venu Fi Kvodova. But he was a Zaken and it's not for his kavod. So therefore, Bichlal, why did he have to even do these whole things? What was he trying? He had to buy it and then make it a... He's a Zaken, you have a pasuk, Vitalamta, you're allowed to close your eyes. And so the Gemara, Rabbi Yishmael be Rabbi Yosef, Lifnim Mishurat Adin, right, Udavad. He was doing Lifnim Mishurat Adin. Tetane Rav Yosef, there's taught Rav Yosef, והודעת להם את הדרך אשר ילכו בה, ואת המעשה אשר יישאו, והודעת להם זה בית חייהם, which means Moshe Rabbeinu came and he was teaching them, שילמדו אומנות, that they should learn, בית חייהם, that they should learn something פרנסה in order that they could get פרנסה. את הדרך, is גמילות חסדים, ילכו ביקור חולים. Right, by the way, this is where we learned that Bikur Cholim should be done, that you have to go yourself and not by telephone. Because it says Yelechu, they learn from the Pasuk Yelechu that you should go to it. Meaning not just stand by some other way. You're right, but the Avad, obviously, if a person has no other choice, right, the person's out of town, right, and now they're going to call them, they're not going to travel, I don't know what, to do Bikur Cholim. But, right, Lechatchila, obviously, when a person can, they should do Bikur Cholim themselves. Right, Bah is Kevurah, Veta Maaseh is Din, justice. Sheri Asun is Lifnim Mishurat Adin. So you see from here that there's such a concept of lifnim mishurat adin. Okay, and therefore, since we just said this, so it comes out, right, that he was doing lifnim mishurat adin. Meaning you're right, even though, right, he didn't need to do this, he was just doing it because of lifnim mishurat adin, even though you didn't need to do it. He could have just closed his eyes, walk on. Nothing happened. He didn't want to do that because he didn't want, he wanted to do lifnim mishurat adin. Says the Gemara, the 2 dots. Amar Mor, Yelechu is Bikur Cholim. So says the Gemara, Hainu Gimilu Chasadim. I don't understand. Why do you need Bikur Cholim and Gimilu Chasadim separate? It's all the same thing. Bikur Cholim is Gimilut Chasadim. So therefore, what do you... Kilu, you're telling me, no, V'odatalem et derech is Gimilut Chasadim. But then it's Yelechu, Bikur Cholim is Gimilut Chasadim. Kevura is Gimilut Chasadim. Well, what's going on? So says the Gemara, Lo Nitzicha, what are we dealing with? Ella Beven Gilo. We're talking about somebody that was born in the same mazal. Okay? Why? More says Ben Gilo notele 50 bechol yo. Right? To do with the Ben Gilo, it's going to take 1/60th of the sickness. Right? Vafilu hachi, and still, even so, still mibayle lemezal gabe, which means he still has to go, right, to do it. Which means that by Ben Gilo, the mevaker atzmo, right, is actually getting damaged because he's taking it. Yeah? One more time. If a person is not Ben Gilo and he comes and he visits a sick person, what happens? Nothing. Chazak Baruch. What happens if Ben Gilo? He comes and now he takes 1/60th. So if he's taking 1/60th, he's actually getting damaged. So the chidush is that even though it's not good for him because he's getting damaged, he still has to do it. And that's why they're learning it, that it's still, because Giminut Chasadim, by the way, is usually when you're not losing anything. So if you're doing chesed, here by the Bikur Cholim, even if you're going to lose because you're going to come and take the part of the sickness, it's going to be okay. By the way, when I gave a shiur on Bikur Cholim, the Rambam does not mention this concept of Ben Gilo, the Ravad does, and the reason why is because the Rambam is based upon the Midrash. Because the Midrash actually says without Ben Gilo, meaning the Gemara says that it's only by Ben Gilo that he takes 1/60th. The Gemara, the Midrash, Rabbi, says that it's even without the Ben Gilo, he still takes 1/60th. Now the reason why nothing actually happens to the person is because 1/60th of the sickness, a person still has enough antibodies to fight against it, which means that's why many times a person could visit a sick person and they don't become sick because they have enough antibodies in their body in order to go against it, right? We're not talking about obviously one of these how do you call the very dangerous okay, I forgot the word in English. The very the very easily the very sicknesses. Which one? Transmitted. No, but it's a very bad. No, but contagious. But there's a very very fatal one, which is like very that usually you have to go in with a Well,
COVID was not so fatal.
But whatever I'm saying, but it has to be that you go in. You usually have to go in with like a whole suit and a whole. I forgot what it's called, but okay. But basically, one second. So basically, what happens is that a person just has to understand that the Rambam was actually basing it not on the Gemara, he was basing it upon the Midrash, and that's why he said that there's always a mitzvah to visit, and you will still take away 1/60th, right? Also, as well. Now, when the Gemara says ba, because we just finished Yelechu is Bikur Cholim, ba was Kevura. Says the Gemara the same question. Hainu Gemilu Chasadim. At the end of the day, Kevura is also Gemilu Chasadim. Answers the Gemara, Lo Nisichol we're dealing with. El Zaken Venu Lefi Kvodo. Here, even though it says Zaken and it's not Lefi Kvodo, right? Still, there's a chiyuv to come and to still bury the person. So again, that means even though you would have been patur, right? Mitzad Gemilut Chasadim, because it's Zaken Venu Lefi Kvodo. Here he would be chayav because of the word ba. Next, says the Gemara, Asher Yasu. So he says that's Lifnim Mishurat Adin. Rabbi Yochanan said, "Lo chaver Yerushalayim ela shedanu al pi din Torah." Right? Why was Yerushalayim destroyed? Because they were judging al pi din Torah. So says the Gemara, "Ela dine de mizkata dainu." He says, "What? Kilu what? You don't want to do it al pi din Torah? Obviously, you're going to do it al pi din Torah." Says the Gemara, "No. Ela ema shemidu dinem al din Torah velo avdu lifnim mishurat adin." They went too much strict to the letter of the law, and they were not doing lifnim mishurat adin. The fact that they weren't doing lifnim mishurat adin, right? That's why they came. And they were actually doing this. Okay? Fine. Ezohi aveda. What exactly is an aveda? Matzah hamor, or para, roim baderech. Enzo aveda. If you come and you find a hamor or a para, which are grazing on the path, it's not considered an aveda. You don't have to give it back. Why? Because basically the owner knows that it's there. And bechavana he left it there. Right? Chamor ve'kelav afuchin. But if you see the chamor and the kelim which are the opposite, or para ratza ben hakramim, where you see a para in the middle of the kramim, and obviously it's going to get hurt over there in the vineyards and everything. Harezu aveda, that is an aveda, which means not everything that you're going to have is considered an aveda. You understand? Sometimes you have a guy that he double parks, right? It's not called an aveda. The guy did it there purposely, right? But sometimes it happens that a guy has, meaning certain things is called an aveda, certain things is not called an aveda. If you find an animal, right, vechzira, and you give it back, ubarcha, and then he ran away, vechzira, and then he give it back, ubarcha, afinu arba'a v'hamisha pe'amim hayav le'achzira. You're obligated to give it back. Shneimar, it says in a pasuk, hashev teshivem. What is hashev teshivem? Even if it's going to be pe'amim rabot. So this is what we were mentioning before, the same thing. The mitzvah always continues. You're going to say, what? This guy's a hamor tipesh, that every single time he keeps on losing the what's it called? Losing the thing, and they keep on giving him back and giving it back. No, even if, doesn't matter. Afilu pe'amim rabot. Says the Mishnah, Haya batel misela. If right now the person that finds is batel from a melacha, that right now it's going to be for a sela. Lo yomar lo, he can't come and tell the guy, tell li sela. Right? Why? Because the Bala Veda could tell him that Shavat Aveda is not the same tircha as work. So therefore, lo magia lecha sela. Meaning like this. Imagine right now I could get a salary of the minimum wage. How much is minimum wage now? I don't know, $15 an hour, right? Whatever it is. Yeah? Okay, whatever. No, the official one is much less, but I'm saying about the non-official one. The official one I think is still under 10 or just by 10. Right? Yeah, but we're talking about the non-official minimum wage is, let's say 15, 18, whatever it is. Right? So now, if I could come and tell the guy, listen, it took me an hour to give you back to take the Avedah, to give it back to you. So give me the $15 or $18. He says, no. He says, when you're working, work is work. This is not work. Giving something back, that's not called work. So he says, Ela noten lo scharo kepoel. You give him the sechar as a regular worker. Meaning not you're gonna let's say for example he's a lawyer, so he's making I don't know what $400 an hour or whatever. No. I give you like a regular poel, right? Im yesh sham bedin, if there's a bedin of 3 people, right? And now he doesn't want to stop his work for it. Matne bifne bedin, he could actually be matne in front of a betin that he's not mukhan to give it back unless he actually gets the reward, right? And therefore, right, and the betin are going to tell him whether he gives it back and gets it, or, right, and then he'll actually get the reward. So imagine, he goes in front of the betin, he says, listen, betin, I found this object, I'm willing to get, but only if I get this wage. So okay, that's what you make, that's you no problem. Im en sham betin, but if there's no betin, who's he going to do this in front of? Shelo kodem. Says the Gemara, his comes before his friend, and therefore he's not going to stop his work because it's not valuable. Meaning it doesn't worth it. Imagine right now you come and you're going to give back something which is even less valuable than your work. So what so you kept the entire thing. That's so called Hashavat Avida. That's nothing. Fine. Says the Gemara. Atu kol hani de'amrinan lehu lava v'dahavu. He says, 1 second. All the things that we mentioned until now is not considered an Avida. What does it mean? What is the kavanah of the Mishnah? That the Mishnah said Dafka, Chamor, and Para are considered an Avida. What does that mean? So Amar of Yehuda comes and he says, this is what he means to say. Ezui klal, right, Avida. What exactly can you actually say, right? How do you actually know whether it's an Avida, right? Shu chayav ba, that he's obligated to come and take care of it. So he says, Matzah, Chamor, Para, roim baderech, enzo Avida. V'lo michayav ba, and you're not obligated to give it back. Chamor vekelim afuchim, but if it's going to be the opposite, that the chamor is there and the kelim are upside down, or the paravina is running around in the bin akramim, that is an avidah, and you're obligated to give it back, right? Because for sure he didn't leave it bechavana, and obviously the baalim don't know about it, right? So basically, that's what's happening, right? I would say, by the way, that children many times, it happens many times with children. Sometimes I think that we have avidah here, right? I come and I find the children, wandering around, and you come to the children. Do the parents actually know that they're back here or not? Right? There's a whole question about that. Yeah, so the same thing. Is that considered, right? He comes and he's saying, is it considered an Avedah or not an Avedah? Yeah? Uleolam, right? And he says, and everybody, what does that mean in everybody? He says, Ata tzodek. Yeah? Uleolam, he comes and he says, even if he's going to come and see, right, the animals for a long time, right? He says, are you always going to say that? I'm saying at the end of the day, you don't have to be mitapel b'hem. So for sure, it's not the normal of the Bala Be'emot to come and to leave their animals for such a long time, right? Because the question is, okay, fine. He probably knows that his animal's outside, but for such a long time? Meaning what? Even for, I don't know how many hours, and obviously you're going to start saying what's going on. You're right. Until 3 days, he still knows that his animal's there. But if it's going to be there for more than 3 days, it probably means that the guy doesn't know that the animal's there, and that's why he left it there. Right? That's what happens. Means, for example, sometimes a person, they know that it's there. But if it's going to be here for a while, you're going to say, no, the guy doesn't realize that it's here. You're going to say he doesn't realize. So says the Gemara, Hechi dami. Right? In which case is Rav Yehuda coming and talking about until 3 days? If you're talking about Belel Yata, right, that basically you saw the animal in the middle of the night, Afilu Chadashata nami, even for 1 hour it's going to be enough. If it's going to be during the day, so Afilu Tuva nami lo. So even if it's going to be more than 3 days, right, it could be that the Baalim, they put it there every single day, and they take it back. So therefore, even if it's more than 3 days, what's the problem? Right? What's the case? If it's at nighttime, for sure it's probably lost. But what in the world is that the animal doing in the middle of the street in the middle of the night? So obviously it's lost. And if it's in the middle of the day, it could be that every single day he comes, brings the animal, and then he takes it back. So what's going on? So answers the Gemara, Latzicha, what are we dealing with? Tehava chazila bekadmata. Right? You see it in the morning before Alot HaShachan, right? Even before the animals come to graze. Uvachashachta, and in the nighttime, after Shkiat HaChama, after usually they come back. The Tlata Yome, until 3 days, Amnina Tirumi Tirumi Lavinafka. We could say there was a mikre that it just happened not in the regular time. Tfe Vadaya Vidahu. But if it's more, it's already an Avidah. Meaning, every single time I come, I'm coming to nets. So now they only come usually at the time of the but the animal was already there. Now I don't know if it was in the middle of the night, because I didn't come in the middle of the night. So if I don't know if it's in the middle of the night, okay. So if we said it was in the middle of the night, for sure it's going to be lost. But I didn't come. I came a little bit early. So, okay, you're right. Usually they come half an hour later. But it was here. So maybe it just happened. And the nighttime, the same thing. The nighttime, it was after Shkia. Usually by Shkia, they already bring in all the animals. It was a little bit after the Shkia. So I say, okay, it could be that he's on the way. Yeah? But if I see that for 3 days in a row, I say for sure then it's lost. That there's nothing to talk about. Okay? The Tanya Miyach, we also learned this in Braita to do with a talit. Right? Matzah talit v'kardom. Right? Bisratia. Right? In a public thoroughfare. Right?
What?
Thoroughfare. It's a public path. Yeah? Right? Yeah. Yeah, so he says upara. Yeah, yes, 100%. Right? He says, right, upara ratza ben akramim. Right? And the para is between the kramim. Is avodah. Talit betzad gader or kardon betzad gader. But if it's going to be beside a fence, upara roe ben akramim. Ends over that. It's not an avodah. Shlosha yamim zachar. If it's going to be 3 days, one after another, it is avodah. Ramaim sheshot finu baim. But if you see water coming, how does it go with them? You should put something in front of the water in order to be shomer the sadeh. Okay, so therefore, what we're actually coming and we're saying is exactly the exact same halacha. That basically until 3 days, it's still considered, right? If it's going to be more than 3 days, it's going to be an avidah. But before the 3 days, it's not considered an avidah. So again, this is exactly what we mentioned before as well.